just for a couple of days for the marathon, so thanks very much for giving of your precious time to come in. And Sue is based in Ramat Beit Shemesh.
Yes.
Well, the way.
It's quite far. It's quite far, you know.
Right, and as I said, they're both innate health practitioners, and they're great, so over to you.
Okay, thank you. Before we start, who's here for the first time? Like, not in the centre, but like to an innate health or 3 principles talk? Okay. So there's some total beginners here in this understanding. That's good to know. My name is Julian Fraser, as I just said. I'm an innate health or 3 principles practitioner based in London. And well, we're going to come to what that is exactly. The title of tonight's talk is A Fresh Perspective on Dealing with Pain, Tragedy and Trauma. And I just wanted to start by sort of saying, we were discussing in the car on the way here, it's important to say that this is obviously quite an emotive and sensitive subject for people, you know, and I was just saying to someone just before we started that you know, everyone is coming from their own unique perspective. They have their own unique circumstances. You know, no 2 people go through the same thing, just like, you know, no one has the same fingerprint. Everyone has, you know, a different set of experiences in life, and it can be, you know, very painful for people. So if I say anything or Sue says anything tonight that might be, that sounds like we're being insensitive, it's totally down to my lack of communication skills. So I apologise in advance if I upset anyone. It's really not my intention. So if I have to rely on that, you know, there's the disclaimer.
I'm glad that you're going to
I'm taking responsibility for yours as well.
Thank you.
The other thing I wanted to say is that quite typically, like, I've been to kind of, let's say, Jewish talks on this kind of subject before, you know, like why do bad things happen to good people? Why do good things happen to bad people? That kind of talk. And this is not going to be like one of those talks. You know, we're not going to be discussing morality, whether there's a God, whether or not why he gives certain issues to certain people. That's a different subject for a different time. I'm sure that you'll check on the schedule. There are other better teachers than me. I speak for myself.
And certainly me.
Who will give that class and could answer those kind of questions far better than I could. What we're going to be talking about is let's say, for want of a better word, a psychological perspective on this question. So there's a way in which every human being operates to the same psychological principles as everyone else. So in the same way that we all have heart that pumps blood around our body, and, you know, our lungs operate automatically, we don't have to think about operating them. There is also a psychological system or order that we rely on, and we don't even know it, we don't see it, but when it's realized, where people see that is the case, it can be completely mind-blowing, life-changing, and we're going to be focusing on that, I hope, in the talk tonight. So, did you want to add anything, sir?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I like what you're saying, I'm listening.
So is everyone on board with that? Does everyone kind of feel like that might be an interesting discussion? If you're here, now's the chance to leave if that's not what you're interested in.
We won't be offended either.
Yeah. So, as I said, there's this psychological system that's at play in everyone. Now, I want to start by kind of talking about a personal circumstance. You know, something that happened to me where I saw this, but the point is, I'm not giving anyone. I don't want anyone to hear like I'm giving them advice on how to deal with something. I'm giving them like kind of a way in which they should then operate. I'm really pointing, as I said before, to a way in which every human being works, and we just don't see it. Sometimes in different situations, you know, we get blinded by the circumstances or the pain or the, emotional feeling, and we don't see that there's this system at play. And that's kind of the direction that I'd like everyone to just consider, really, just to be open enough to consider that. So I should start by saying that this happened 13 years ago, just under 13 years ago, actually, before I became a 3 principles practitioner or an innate health practitioner, before I'd even heard of these 3 principles, this understanding. And at that time, I saw it very localized. And I'll come back to this. What I mean by that is I saw freedom given a very painful set of circumstances, but within that and only that situation, it didn't seem to apply elsewhere. Again, I'm trying to show how this system works outside of just that locality, that it works universally, not just for me in every situation, or Sue, but all of you, everyone. So I hope I managed to do that. So 13 years ago, my second child, actually 13 years ago, I was living in Yerushalayim, actually, which is interesting. And we flew back to London to have the baby because it didn't work out to have it here. And we had to have it, as part of the health service over there. And when she was born, she wasn't breathing, and it was a total shock to the system. Like, nothing in the build-up, nothing in the pregnancy, nothing in the labour had suggested that there was any problem. And when she came out, she was just this purple baby that wasn't moving, that wasn't breathing. And basically the midwife, because that's how it works in the UK, if you don't know, kind of panicked and ran out to get the special care baby unit, the team, and other midwives piled in, and she still wasn't breathing, and it was all it was quite shocking. And she didn't breathe for something like 10 minutes, which was, those 10 minutes seemed to take an age. And I was trying to pray, trying to be helpful, trying to do something, but being totally helpless. And eventually she started breathing, and there was lots of activity, and they got into lots of tests, and she started, actually a few hours later, she started getting into fitting. She started having epileptic fits. So they sedated her. She a few hours later after that, she had some like an MRI scan, and they saw then that she had suffered a brain damage at birth, basically due to the lack of oxygen, and that she was going to have some sort of, although at that time unspecified, some issues, let's say. No one, the doctors, when that happens, I don't know if anyone's been in that situation, but the doctors really don't know, because all they see is just a picture of the brain, and they don't really see how that's going to play out. So the next 2 weeks, we were going, my wife was in the hospital, and I was going in and out, just visiting them in hospital, not knowing really what was going on, just waiting for Chassia, who she was then called, to wake up, really, and I guess just be a normal baby, although at that stage a normal baby is just feeding normally, It was a waiting game, and for those 2 weeks it was very painful. It was, because it felt like I had this kind of unanswerable question. The doctors weren't able to answer. Well, what's her life going to be like? What's she going to be like? They don't know, and she wasn't She wasn't even conscious. She was feeding through a tube, and the expectations that you have going into that situation is a normal, in inverted commas, normal birth, and a normal development, normal child development. So you in those 2 weeks, I just started asking myself lots of questions. What's life going to be like? In 2 years' time, is she going to be able to crawl? Or is she going to be able to walk? Is she going to be able to, go to school? Is she going to be a vegetable? So if I can use such challenging terms, but I realise that's what I was thinking at the time. It's probably not, and I apologise to anyone again if I've used a term that is insensitive. I hark back to what I said at the beginning. That's my lack of communication skills. Is she going to be able to feed herself? Is she going to be able to get married? Is she going to be able to get herself dressed? Is she going to be able to function as a normal human being? And those questions were causing a tremendous amount of pain, and it was a severely traumatic, painful experience for me, and to the same extent my wife. At some point, and I still remember, I had a conversation on the phone. I was outside the hospital and I was in tears. I was speaking to a friend of ours who's a nurse. She was a special care baby nurse, and she said something to me like, it's interesting because she was saying something like, it's part of God's plan. This is how it's meant to be, and again, I can't remember the exact words she used, but what I heard in what she was saying, quite interestingly, which is where it started to kind of be helpful, was your pain, or the pain that you're going through, is coming from you, not the situation. It's coming from your perspective. It was, the situation is as it is. The situation, whether, and I said I wasn't going to say this at the beginning, but whether you accept there's a God, you don't accept there is a God, or anything in between, or whatever, that in a way is not the issue. The situation is as the situation is. What is causing my pain, what I saw, what was causing my pain was in fact my perspective on the situation. Those questions that I said that I was asking myself earlier. Is she going to walk? Is she going to talk? Is she going to get married? Is she going to have kids? Is she going to dress herself? Is she going to, all the questions that I was asking myself, those questions, or those thoughts and feelings, they were the source of my pain. The situation, she was lying in a bed in the hospital in a totally painless situation. She was 10 days, 2 weeks old. She was not in the slightest bit of pain. The pain was coming from, my pain was coming from my perspective on her situation. However she develops, however she ends up being, however she, all the questions that I was asking myself, whatever the answers to those were, first of all, is totally unknown, but that's kind of irrelevant. What I'm saying is that it's my perspective on these questions. Literally just me asking myself those questions is the cause of my pain, because I'm not coming up with any answers. The doctors can't give me any answers. Just my asking myself the question is causing the pain. And I realised that that I could carry on asking myself those questions or not. Like, it wasn't going to do anything to ask myself those questions apart from just feel pain. And I didn't want to cause myself pain. Nobody wants to cause themselves pain. And I kind of thought to myself, well, just don't ask yourself those questions. Just don't. Why bother dealing with that right now? Literally, why are you doing that? You know. So at that moment, well, in that kind of time period, I kind of realized I didn't have to ask myself those questions. Like, they could remain unanswered, and I would not be any worse off. So I decided to stop asking myself those questions, really, and very quickly, I emerged from that painful experience. Just in terms of my wife, it's interesting because I remember coming back to Israel actually a month or so later, and she was still experiencing a lot of pain around that experience, you know. And it took some time for her, you know, for her to kind of emerge in her way from seeing what I had seen. Because obviously we would talk about that, and it was painful for her, and she found her own kind of way out of it, again, I think through the same perspective. And thank God we both emerged from that. Just going back to what I said a little bit earlier about this common system, the thing I'm trying to point out to people, and I'd like everyone to kind of consider, is that there is this common system that's in place for everyone, where what we think about creates our experience. So for me, in that moment in the hospital, well, for those 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however, you know, kind of that initial period of pain and trauma that I was experiencing, it was horrible. But what I was thinking about and the feelings that were coming from those thoughts were the source of the pain. Now, I said before, I didn't see how that spread out across every aspect of life, but it is true that we all operate to the same system, that whatever we think about, whatever is on our minds is what we're going to feel. So if on our minds is, you know, whether I could have done more to prevent, you know, this from happening, you know, maybe, and it did go through my mind, you know, like, did I do what I could to tell the doctors, you know, that there was a problem? Because it later transpired through, you know, 10 years worth of examination and legal argument, let's say, that the hospital did make some serious mistakes. You know, this wasn't, let's say, an inherent, you know, kind of, what's the word, like a genetic issue. This was an act of negligence, and incompetence on the part of the hospital. You know, and maybe I could have done more to you know, kind of fought with the doctor or the midwife to kind of keep a closer watch, because I did at one point go to the doctor and say, you know, this is taking quite a long time, isn't it? Isn't there something you could do about you know, having a cesarean maybe, you know? And he was like, no, there's nothing here. You know, maybe I was asking myself those questions as well. Maybe I could have begged him more, you know, to change the situation. And you know, as I said, you know, these questions of, what ifs, my expectations for a normal life for my daughter, they were also creating my experience. So what I was thinking about was creating those feelings, and realizing that for not just me, but for every human being, in every situation, is in and of itself completely life-changing. Because at the moment that I saw that, and the moment that I, again, as part of this approach to psychological understanding, these 3 principles, innate health, when I share these ideas with people, share this, essentially the essence of what I'm talking about now, that this human system works, when people see that for themselves, they find the freedom, not with trying harder to just do this or try that or whatever. It's just realizing that my experience is coming from me. My feelings are coming from me. They're not coming from the outside. They're coming from in me. And seeing that wherever it shows up is massively liberating. Massively liberating. Sue, did you want to say something? Yeah.
I just want to sort of pick up on something that Julian said, and just to sort of really reiterate it. Circumstances are circumstances. With all the best will in the world, we can't change them, and we're not talking about changing them or trying to in any way. But they've happened, and it's not. This is not sort of any sort of denial either. This is just understanding, as Julian's so eloquently put, and I can't say it in quite so many words. So I'm lucky because he's going to take the brunt of my bad communication thing. So, but that there is, there's a way that we work. There are principles of how life works. And it doesn't matter, honestly, whether we understand them or know about them, because they're working anyway. It's a bit like gravity or, gravity, I guess. It's working in and around us anyway. It's nothing to do with us. And the other thing was that sort of occurred to me, and I didn't want, we met, Julian and I didn't meet so early on, but I met his wife, and I don't want to go into my story particularly, but purely and simply because I too have special needs children, and it was a bit of a shock to me as well, so in a different way. My looking into the future, and I had somewhat similar experience in that, what are they going to do? How am I going to manage? How am I going to cope? How am I going to cope? And this little girl was just sort of had no idea. She was doing fine as far as she was concerned. She was okay. It wasn't a big problem. But I found that the more I was looking in the future, the more I wasn't in the present. I was looking somewhere else. And we only have a psychological experience in this moment, in this present moment, and everything else is not a psychological experience. Would you say that? So, I just realised, again, interestingly, before I came actually to hear or understand anything about the 3 principles or innate health, that it just wasn't helpful for me. It wasn't constructive, and actually it was slowing me down, and I was getting caught up in the minutiae of who I needed to speak to even in 5 years' time. And I wasn't then there for my family, and I had other family as well, like you did. So I found more and more and more that not being in the now, not being in the present moment, was just so. Really, it was a burden for me, because I was carrying a weight around of what could be or might be. And honestly, I've been through all sorts of different experiences, I'm sure we all have, of pain in different ways, and looked back on it and taken from the past what's happened and mulled it over and over and over. And again, that's just for me seeing more and more and more that we're not in this present moment. And that's just sort of a memory brought through time, just with a thought. That's all it is. There's nothing more than that. Because it's not happening now. It's finished.
Yeah. I mean, I guess to kind of summarise in some way what we'd like people to entertain is that the circumstances of our lives happen to us, have happened to us, will happen to us, but they do not define they do not set an absolute truth for us to experience. Meaning, we go through the circumstances, we go through life, and we have to deal with situations. But how we feel about those situations and how the ups and downs of what we experience comes from within us. It doesn't come from those situations. It doesn't define us effectively. We might relate to life in that way, and I certainly did afterwards. After this experience, as I've said, like I went through life not realizing that this experience applied elsewhere. And I had other areas that I didn't even realize that this was a general understanding that could be shared with other people. Like, I just thought, well, I can think about this, or I can not think about it and just get on with other things. Like, I didn't realize that was like it's a universal understanding that we're pointing out to people, that we share with people. Like, I didn't come up with these three principles through that experience either. Like, someone, years later, three years later, I kind of was presented with this understanding by someone totally unconnected, and years after that, I realized, well, that's exactly what happened over here. So it is a universal understanding that our experience of life, how we feel about life, comes from within us via the power of thought. And we don't see that. Human beings generally, I didn't speak for myself. As I said, I saw it. It didn't apply elsewhere, it only applied over here. But once you see the universality of thought and what thought actually is, meaning it's just a momentary experience of life in one moment, and the next moment is a totally new experience of thought. And it's incredibly transient. Thought moves massively. 1 minute I can be thinking about I need a drink, the next minute I can be listening to Sue, the next minute I can be thinking about what people are writing. Like, all the time, my thoughts, your thoughts, all our thoughts is just moving. Thought is this energy that just keeps going, and yet we take the momentary experience of it in certain situations massively seriously. We jump on it, and suddenly it can literally stay with us forever if we go with it. It can stay with us for the rest of our lives if we let it. Now, the good news is that when people see that the possibility of realizing how thought works and what thought is, and just seeing that its transient nature, then you can be free from that. You can let go of that thought, or think about something else. Like, that's how it works. It works like that, and we don't even know it. Like, even in those moments of massively painful thought, we can be distracted by other thoughts. Like, we realize that we've got to have some dinner, so we go and make some dinner. Or we I don't know, we need to take a phone call. Phone rings, so we get on the phone. Oh, I've got to get the phone. So again, we just don't see that that's how thought works. That it is this system that keeps changing, and just operates regardless of what we're doing. And as I said, just seeing that is the case for everyone is hopefully helpful for people. Just before we take some questions, is there anything that you wanted to add?
No, I wanted to see that.
There was a question, or was it? No. You wanted to ask a question.
Sorry, I came in a little late, so I apologize. I don't know what the 3 P's are, but well, my question is this. Okay, so if you, I myself went through a couple of traumatic experiences. I was run over a couple of times, and my thing is that how do you not? Okay, you understand you went through this traumatic experience, but how do you like? Sometimes, I find myself getting used to thinking about that, and sometimes you get so used to it that it becomes like its own self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. How do you like come out of that way of thinking? If it's something that because we're creatures of habit, so if you're constantly, I'm not saying I think about it every day, but I think about like, well, what could have been, so had I not gotten run over, or had this woman not hit me head on. How do you not? How do you get out of that way of thinking? I mean, what's the first step in that?
Happy to answer.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure whether I want to go into inside out and outside in. Yes. Yeah. So this is just the way I see it. So and this sort of makes sense to me that we all have repetitive thinking, but repetitive thinking to me looks like something from the past, something from outside, and I just know that, or I've come to understand, I've seen that carrying that is just me putting something on it. So in other words, I'm almost encouraging that. And when I look and observe and even maybe question in a way, where are my feelings coming from in this moment? If they're not coming from my thought in the moment, if they're coming from somewhere like the past, then I'm not having a psychological experience of this present moment. Does that make sense at all? Or?
Yes, it does.
So actually what I'm saying is that in fact when we start to see more that we're not in the present moment, and we can't always be in the present moment, it's not possible, we're human beings and we're going to go in and out, and we are sometimes going to see it and sometimes we're not. But when we do see it, then actually it's almost like a subtraction, so that gets taken away. And that thinking, I'm not saying that thinking isn't going to come back in again. I can't tell you that for sure. I wish I could, but I can't. I'm sorry.
Can I ask you another question? I used to work with children who are special needs, and I have one of my family. He has 2 children who have Asperger's, and one has autism. And I see that sometimes his referencing, there's a level of consciously accepting the situation for what it is, but sometimes I wonder if, and I can't judge anybody, but sometimes I wonder, one of her kids is like 19 years old now, or 20, and sometimes I notice that I wonder if she really truly accepted the situation for what it is, you know. How do you know that you truly accepted the experience, you know, whether it's, you know, an accident or whether it's a child that you hope will be a trauma problem, but it's not going to be, you know? How do you know that you've accepted the situation?
Oh my gosh.
That's an interesting question.
It really is.
Can I ask, like, I don't know, because it would be helpful to know why that's important. And I mean like.
Well, why is it
Yeah.
of interest?
Why is it important?
No, I'm not. I want to answer the question.
Why is it interesting to you?
What about the special needs kid, or just
No, just
No,
like
just
whether someone else accepts their situation.
Yeah.
Because
Like,
I
are you
wanna
asking?
know- I want to know if it's possible. Because the thing is, I find
Oh.
myself
Right.
in a situation where, you know, I'm trying to move past, you know, certain things that were, and in my mind, I think are a failure, you know. You know, sometimes you sit there, okay, well, I didn't achieve this goal, or I didn't achieve this situation, you know. And, you know, you tend to think, okay, you know, all right, it's not so bad, but then sometimes if there's something that you really, really desired, truly desired, and it did not work at all, then you're almost kind of like mourning it, you know. And sometimes I think, like, you know, like in this case with this representative who has children who are special needs, I think it's, I'm not saying, I'm not in her mind, I'm not an
Yeah.
you know, but sometimes, you know, people mourn the child that they want, you know. And how do you truly come to a level of acceptance?
Well, now I understand your question. At least I think I do. So, I mean, I guess what I want to say is, when we said at the beginning, kind of, we weren't getting into the moral discussion about, you know, whether God exists, why good things happen to bad people. Different subject, different discussion, and it's a very important topic. It's just, you know, we're kind of talking about a psychological perspective on this understanding. So, from my situation, in this situation, you know, in this circumstance with my daughter in hospital, and now, like, she is, you know, in a wheelchair. She needs waking care from, you know, not 24/7, but apart from when she's asleep, yeah, you know, she is as she is. Like, that, I could and would become upset and emotional if I did ask myself the questions that you're asking yourself. You know, like, what if, right? Because what if she, the nurse had recognized, you know, that she was in distress? You know, what sort of life would she have? And that would cause me an amount of pain when I use it in these situations. Like, it does bring that up for me, but realizing that feeling, that the quality of that feeling is not enjoyable, meaning I don't want to go into that, right? And I have free will, okay? We all have free will. I don't want to ask myself these questions. Like, genuinely, I'm not interested in it, because it's like me saying, what if I knew the lottery numbers? What if I, you know, who knows? Yeah, it's a pointless experience that I have total choice over, because my feeling only comes from what I think about. So, given that I have total choice and total ability to experience life outside of that question, I'm not interested in it. And kind of asking your question before, like, in habitual thinking, I have other things. I have other areas where I experience that, not necessarily in tragedy, pain and tragedy, not pain and tragedy, and that comes up for me. And my experience of that is, the less interest I have in those things, the less it kind of comes up. It's just the way that my thought works. I just see that. But also, as I get clearer and clearer that this is just my thinking about it, I'm less interested in, am I thinking about it? Am I not thinking about it? Because again, it's just a thought. It's not the situation. It's not me reliving what happened 13 years ago. It's not me reliving that experience. It's just my thinking about that experience. So I realized that it's not a real fresh emotional experience that's happening right now. It's something that is being brought to life through my thinking about it, and when it goes, and as it's just a thought, like I learn to be less interested and bothered by it, because it just looks to me like like having a nightmare or a dream. It's just something that I'm experiencing right now, and next minute I'll be thinking about what's for dinner, or my job, or whatever it is. Like it passes.
It just sort of reminds me of something. I don't know, you know how things pop up into your head, thoughts pop up into your head, and it just reminds me of hearing someone telling me that they'd been to sleep and woken up, and during the time they'd been asleep they'd committed 2 murders and been in a train crash and all sorts of things. This was their dream. Now, they woke up and they laughed about it. I'm not saying that we can laugh about pain and tragedy. I'm not saying that at all, but what's the difference? What's the difference? It's still, our thinking coming to life.
You see, that's a great example, is dreams and nightmares. It's like, as a small child, right? So I was very disturbed by what I was dreaming about, okay? Right? I used to dream that I was being chased by a witch. Opposite the park
It's
by
my sister.
Yeah, opposite the park by my grandma's house, right? And I used to wake up, feeling very... And now what happens is, over time, we learn to see that thinking, or that those dreams, are not real. Like, as a very small child, you're massively disturbed by it. And then as you get older and more accustomed to either being told that's a dream, or you just see that it's not real, that you're really in bed and there's no witch hiding behind the curtains, you grow accustomed to that thought, and to the point that I don't dream about witches anymore. Right?
You might.
I might, but we become. It's not something that we take seriously. And what Sue was pointing to is that there is a way in which, whether we're awake or asleep, whatever we think about, we can relate to in the same way, if we want to. Yeah. We can either be like a very small child getting very caught up in the immediate emotional experience of it, or we can learn to experience it as thought and just be more accepting of it and see it for what it is. It's just I don't know if as a 3-year-old we wouldn't say that's just a thought. We wouldn't see it as thought. We would just be like, oh, okay, I'm just dreaming about the witch again, or whatever,
And isn't it funny, because I remember speaking to a young child, and he was having a lot of panic attacks and worried about things that were going on in his life, and we were just talking about something, and he said, oh, I could put it on. We were talking about a train. I don't even know why. And he said, well, I could put my thinking on a train, and then I could wave goodbye to it. And I thought, well, isn't that amazing that he can see that? And yet, as adults, we don't see it quite so clearly. It's just wonderful, isn't it? And we have that same, I would say, resilience. We have that same ability, that possibility that there's hope that we too, at some stage, might see that and wave it goodbye.
Yeah. I think, that takes us back to kind of the beginning a little bit. I like the word resilience. In fact, I love that word resilience. But every human being is created the same way. You know, we're all different and we go through different experiences, but we all have that resilience in us, regardless of whatever situations we've been through, any circumstances we've been through, whatever happens to us in our life, whatever we're carrying along with us, that built within us is that resilience, and it's accessible at any moment. And for me, that resilience is in this psychological system that we're pointing to. That once you realise that it's coming from inside of you, and thought is this means by which it comes to life and we experience our feelings from, you see that it's very different from it coming from the outside. That the outside world is not as real as it looks. You know, it's not. It is real. It's absolutely real. But it looks like that creates our pain. It looks like that creates our emotional ups and downs. And what we're really, hoping that you can see is that it comes from inside of us. It comes from our thinking and from that our feelings, and that's what we experience. And that resilience is in that realization, is in that understanding that it always, regardless of whatever we're going through, it always is coming from us. And that to me is tremendously hopeful. At least I hope it is hopeful for anyone who's come here based on the topic rather than just to come here soon. Are there any more questions?
What are the three principles?
Okay. The three principles are mind, consciousness, and thought. But taking the context of what we've spoken about tonight, they are simply labels for this understanding. Meaning, thought is the means by which we experience everything in this world. Okay? We are conscious beings, consciousness, and that brings our thinking to life. If you just consider, you are everyone here is looking at me, through their eyes. Their senses are that's bringing your experience to life. So you see me, that is being transmitted to your consciousness, your awareness, and you see this around me. That I've seen studies, where people experience 70,000 thoughts a day, 90,000, 110,000. The reality is you're in a constant stream of thought. Like there's no break in your seeing me right now. Maybe if you close your eyes, but even then you're seeing the inside of your eyes, right? You're hearing, if you're able to hear as well. Obviously you hear me, and that matches the pictures that you're seeing of me moving around. Your touch works in the same way. Smell, you can't smell me, but it's okay. I had a shower before I came.
It smells okay.
And taste works in exactly the same way as well. So they inform our consciousness of what's going on around you. Again, through thought. So your consciousness, which is, as I said, the second of these principles, again, just labels to describe this system. That is your awareness of the situation. And that brings to life these thoughts. Without your consciousness, you wouldn't be aware, you would be unconscious of what was going on around you. You would be unaware of the situation. You wouldn't see me. How many people have, cut themselves on a piece of paper and not realized it until they've seen it? So they are unaware, or they are not consciously aware of that situation. So for me, consciousness brings to life the experience of life, and that's where our experience kind of begins. Mind, that is to me is the most interesting of these principles, because that's the one that I have less direct visibility of. The idea of mind, I think I can say it in the present company, just looking around the room, as an Orthodox Jew, I recognize and see that mind is an aspect of God. Okay, so mind is the fact that my experience of consciousness and thought and everything else going on in the physical and psychological world is being created for me, meaning I don't have to do anything. There is a system that is bringing to life my thinking in a moment-to-moment experience from the minute I'm born until the minute I die, effectively. That is working regardless of whatever I'm doing, wherever I am, any situation, that it is happening to me. And that thoughts are being created for me. I don't sit here and consciously create your existence in my mind. I don't create thoughts in my mind. I don't think, well, I'm going to, feel some love to my wife at 12:30, and then after that I'm going to start feeling sad that she's in London and I'm here. And it's just that there's a spontaneous experience where thoughts are created for me. I don't have any control over it. I don't make it happen. They come into my consciousness regardless of whatever I'm doing. So that experience or that fact is being, for want of a better word, created for me by this intelligence that's behind life, both physical, spiritual, or psychological, whichever word you'd like to kind of use. They are notional labels for these facts, these principles, and when people see them, people see that that's how the experience of life works. The fact that life does work like that regardless of whatever we're doing in any situation at all times, they start seeing life differently. It goes from being this outside-in experience whereby the traffic is causing me hassle, or my kids are driving me mad, or I love my job, or I hate my job, or this person's horrible to me, or painful things happen in life, whatever the situation, to being one where it's coming from inside of me. The situation is as it is. I can't do anything from what I see right now. I can't change certain situations. Maybe I can try a bit over here, maybe I can try a bit over there. Just going back to what you were saying, sir, about goals. Like we want to achieve things in life. We want to do things, but the results of that are somewhat out of our hands. We put in the effort, and if we don't achieve that, the experience of not achieving it, or the feelings around not achieving it, are coming from us. The results of whether or not this X happens or Y happens is out of our hands somewhat. We just show up and do our best. So as people realise that that's how it works, regardless of however we'd like it to work, the fact is that we get in the way of that experience, of the potential of what we could be, and that's where life can be painful and traumatic. And as I said, when people realise that this is how it is, they get some freedom, some real psychological freedom from the pain that they're going through.
And just to add something that just sort of occurred to me as well while you were talking, is that mind is not a thought. It's a constant. It's never changed. That doesn't change. Whereas our personal mind here, this brain, whatever you want to call it, there's constant change. That's always changing. But there's again, I don't want to go into the sort of the one side of it that we're really pointing to, but there is an amazing way that you put a seed in the ground and it starts to grow, and even knows in which direction the sun is. It's phenomenal. It's incredible.
Yeah.
Just see what you said. We both spoke brilliantly. I'm a geek from the spiritual world, and I'm not really spiritual. spiritualists, rabbis here. I don't wish to put myself in the same line as they do. But I just thought from a simple aspect, I think people who are in this predicament, I think the first one got to be focused. They've got to focus. They've got to focus. That they've got to be hard-skinned. That they come up with this terrible situation that people go through, and regard it as a mission. And you be presented with a mission. You're presented with a mission of bringing up a child. You are excelling in bringing up a child. Hashem has given you, if you can put it that way, this mission of loving this child a bit, perhaps giving it more attention than you do for the other children. And the other thing is, you've been blessed with the idea, and who knows where that idea came from, that you're doing this work for the outside world, which I think is also something that should be maybe considered. Can you think who gave you this idea? You know, and you're helping other people. So perhaps good. Hashem is good in some other respects, you know. Because they say that Hashem is nothing, only does good. So if you look at it that way, a lot more positive.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I agree with that. I do agree with that. Yeah. Was that a question, or was it more of a statement? No. I want to. If it was a question.
It's not a question of a statement, but
great.
I think spirituality does help. I know you said you don't want to get involved with spirituality, but.
No, I agree with what you said. Like I do agree with everything you said.
You must be going through a great thing. When does the time stop that you stop thinking about it? You know, saying, "What a shame," you know.
Yeah.
Every day, what a shame, what a shame. You move on.
What we're saying, I agree with you. Yeah. I think look, I come into contact. We work in the London Jewish community, you know, and we see a lot of people, a lot of religious people who are struggling with their lot, you know, and they're coming with that perspective, and we're offering a consistent and a fresh perspective, as we said in the flyer, you know, on the experience of life, which is totally consistent with what you're saying. Like, it agrees with that. I agree with that.
And it ties up with a Kabbalistic idea.
Right.
Again, I'm keen to see, you know, Yaakov Hillel, this issue. It'll give you a totally different perspective. But it also is perhaps not satisfying, but we say it's an answer.
Well,
it's an answer, you know.
that's I think I agree with you. I think I'm saying I'm good. I do agree with you.
Answer, I could put it,
it's a different. This is a different perspective,
yeah.
which is, I think, consistent with what you're saying. It's just
you can't look for reasons or ways or.
I'm saying you can. I'm not saying don't look for reasons.
No,
I'm not disagreeing with anything you've said.
Just get on with it. Do your mission. Carry on with the mission, which is what you've done.
Yeah.
You've done something positive about it. That's very important.
Right. See, I'm not pointing to why it happened. I'm really saying this happens, and knowing why it happens doesn't necessarily help people.
No.
You know, why it happens doesn't necessarily help people find peace with it.
Right.
I'm showing. I hope that we've shown people that there is a way that we all work, regardless of why it happens. There is a way that human beings work, regardless of why it happens.
Yeah.
That when people realise and see that, they find some freedom from it.
Yeah.
And you're right. The situation is as
you've got tremendous energy, which could be diverted because of this situation. It could be diverted to do good in the world, and perhaps the thoughts will be more. The thoughts that you've had, the negative thoughts, will be positive thoughts on other things.
If there's no more questions, then I'd just like to say thank you very much. If anyone wants to be in contact with me, I have an email address. It's julian@tikun.co.uk. or you can speak to me afterwards. And Sue here, I should say. Sue is doing a tremendous job, and Abby and her husband of of bringing this understanding to Israel. So thank you for having me, and please, kind of avail yourself of their services. They are here teaching these ideas and bringing these ideas to Israel.
Yeah. So we have a regular Sunday night webinar every Sunday night, don't we, ladies? So we're there, and if you want to join, you're very welcome. It's completely free. It's online, so you just have to log in. So if you want to be put on that register, so that you get notification of those talks. We do theme them. We have a title each week, but we're there, and we have a very nice, fun conversation for about, how long is it? An hour and 15 minutes, and it's very easygoing. Lots of interaction. Also, in July, I now have confirmation. Terry Rubinstein from England is going to come over, and we're going to speak. We're not sure yet where, but somewhere in Jerusalem. So that will be a 2-day seminar.
Where's the website? What's the website's name?
So if you put your name on in the email list outside, then we'll contact you. We'll be in touch with you. So yeah, that's anything else I should say.
Thank you. Thank you to the EMEC Learning Centre.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.